Welcome to MaxViet, God's Word and Prayer. Today, a truly extraordinary story will be shared, a journey that changed a life forever, an experience that crossed the boundary between life and death. This is not just one man's story, but a powerful testimony of faith, trials, and eternal truth. Join in and step into this incredible journey. My name is Ibrahim Kareim, and I was an Imam who relocated to the United States. For many years, I believed I had found my purpose and calling, but in just one day, everything changed. My faith, my family, and my entire understanding of life. All my preconceived notions were completely upended. To help you understand, I need to take you back to the fateful year when my journey truly began. I was 67 years old when the doctors arrived with devastating news. I had been diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. My time was limited, and the treatments offered only a small chance of extending my life. Still, I believed this illness was a test from Allah, much like the trials faced by Prophet Ibrahim. Just as he held on to the command to sacrifice his son in unwavering obedience, I clung to my faith through every grueling chemotherapy session. With each treatment coursing through my veins, I whispered prayers, surrendering myself to Allah's will. As I lay in bed one night, I fervently prayed, "O Allah, let me die tonight and meet you in peace." Yet, I never could have imagined how that prayer would be answered. One evening, after returning home from another exhausting chemotherapy session, I felt a strange tightness in my chest. At first, I dismissed it as a mere cramp, but the discomfort rapidly escalated into something unbearable. I struggled to breathe as darkness closed in around me. The last thing I saw was a flurry of movement, nurses and doctors rushing, washing their hands, pressing on my chest, desperately trying to bring me back. But I was no longer there. I watched everything from above. Yes, from above. My lifeless body lay motionless on the hospital bed, yet I remained fully conscious. I saw them working on me, yet I felt detached, as though I existed beyond my physical form. Shouldn't my consciousness have faded with my heartbeat? I wondered. Yet I was acutely aware. I knew I had died. Then, suddenly, I saw a light in the distance. It was warm, inviting, and full of a peace unlike anything I had ever known. As I moved toward it, I was enveloped by familiar sounds. My mother's lullabies from my childhood, the echoes of my father's voice reciting Quranic verses. It was as if my entire life was unfolding before me in that moment. As I stepped into the light, an overwhelming serenity washed over me. This must be paradise, I thought. The joy I felt was beyond anything I had ever experienced. Tears streamed down my face, not from pain, but from pure, uncontainable gratitude. Allah has brought me here, I whispered. But then something changed. The lush surroundings began to wither. The vibrant leaves shriveled. The fruit turned black, and the air filled with the stench of decay. Darkness crept in, suffocating the beauty that had once surrounded me. Then I heard them, agonizing cries echoing through the void. The desperate wails of men, women, and children filled the darkness, their voices tangled in torment. And then, among the countless cries, one voice pierced my soul. It was my mother's. "Have mercy," she screamed, her voice thick with anguish. Her plea penetrated my heart with the force of a blade. The darkness thickened around me, heavy and inescapable. I was trapped, unable to tell which way was up or down, lost in an endless void. Then, a deep, resonant voice shattered the silence. It was unlike any voice I had ever heard, powerful, commanding, absolute. Ibrahim, it spoke. Everything shifted. In the distance, I saw it, a throne. Someone sat upon the throne, a figure tall and imposing. As I approached, my knees buckled beneath me. Then I recognized him immediately. It was the Prophet Muhammad. But something was different. His hands were bound in chains, and his expression was filled with sorrow. This can't be real, I thought. Why is he here? Why is he bound? Our eyes met, and tears streamed down his face. The sight of his anguish struck something deep within me. This must be a mistake. It has to be. I was an Imam. I had dedicated my entire life to this faith. I cried out for Allah, but my voice failed me. A voice echoed through the vast emptiness, deep and ancient, reverberating around the throne. The time has come for you to learn the truth. Before I could respond, something fell from above. A book descended from the sky with force, crashing onto the ground and sending tremors through the air. I recognized it immediately. It was the Quran. The book opened, and its pages began to turn on their own, as if guided by an unseen force. Then the voice spoke again. Who is Allah? The question struck me with a sudden intensity. Ibrahim, have you ever truly asked yourself? I was stunned. What kind of question is this? I had always believed that Allah was the creator of all things, the most merciful, the most compassionate. But the voice persisted. How do you know he is? Have you ever truly thought about it? Panic set in. I had never questioned Allah's nature before. Never. I had accepted it as truth, passed down through generations. But now images began to emerge from the pages of the Quran. Scenes from history unfolded before my eyes. I saw the Kaaba, surrounded by idol worshippers, their hands lifted in prayer, their incense and offerings filling the air. They worshipped using names, Al-Lat, Al-Uzza. This was the Kaaba before Islam. Then the voice spoke again. Where was Allah? The revelation came to me abruptly. The Arabs had a belief in these deities long before Islam even existed. Had I thought of Allah as just one among many gods? I reeled as the voice continued. Then the vision shifted. I was transported to an ancient world where a massive idol stood towering over the people. They gathered before it, offering sacrifices, their prayers etched into stone. My eyes locked onto the name inscribed beneath the idol, Baal. Beneath it, in a script strikingly similar to Arabic, was another name, Il. The voice whispered once more, Baal, Il, Allah. Have you ever considered it? I collapsed to my knees, clutching my head. The weight of these revelations was unbearable. Had I been deceived? The thought escaped my lips in a whisper. I gasped for air as my eyes shot open. Bright lights flooded my vision. The sound of beeping machines filled my ears. I was back in the hospital room, surrounded by nurses. Their faces were filled with relief. He's back, one of them murmured. But I was not the same. The images, the voices, the questions, they lingered in my mind, refusing to fade. Everything I had built my life upon now felt uncertain. Days turned into weeks, filled with doubt and confusion. I wrestled with the weight of what I had witnessed. The questions haunted me, and the fear of where they might lead left me shaken. At times, I would sit by the window, watching the world outside, wondering, has anyone else ever felt this? My wife began to notice my distress. She would sit beside me, offering comfort, but even her presence could not silence the storm within me. But the words refused to leave my lips. Could I truly tell her what I had seen? One restless night, unable to sleep, I stepped outside. The cool night air wrapped around me as I wandered into the garden. A gentle breeze brushed against my face, carrying the scent of the earth while the stars shimmered above. As I stood beneath the vast expanse of the heavens, memories flooded back, memories of my time as an Imam. I recalled the first time I had led prayers, my trembling hands resting upon the Quran in our mosque in Baghdad. I had been so young, my voice shaking as I recited the sacred verses. The community had placed their trust in me, seeking my guidance, looking to me for answers, the same answers I now found myself questioning. I thought of my grandfather, a revered Imam, who had first taught me to recite the Quran when I was just 6 years old. I could still picture his weathered hands, gently guiding me through the pages as we sat together. The warm, familiar aroma of cardamom-infused coffee would fill the air. Allah's words are perfect, he would say. But now, those very words felt heavier than ever before. I had never dared to question them. The garden before me was neatly arranged, with roses carefully placed in rows. It reminded me of my wife, Fatima, and of our life back in Iraq. We once had a garden just like this, where our children played in the cool evenings. Their laughter had mixed with the echo of the call to prayer, a sound that wove through the neighborhood like a thread connecting all our lives. What would my Imam followers think if they saw my doubt-filled eyes? I remembered the day we made the difficult decision to leave Iraq. The political climate had become unbearable. A number of clerics had vanished from sight, and Fatima and I were certain that our own safety was imminent. We packed what little we could carry, said our farewells to our extended family, and boarded a plane bound for America. The journey had been terrifying, but we believed that Allah had a plan for us. In America, we built a new life, and our mosque became a refuge for fellow Muslim immigrants, people searching not only for a place to pray, but for a sense of belonging. I counseled countless families, helping them navigate the struggles of assimilation, always pointing them back to their faith, reminding them that Islam was their anchor. The irony of my current situation was not lost on me. My thoughts drifted to the youth in our community. Many had come to me over the years, struggling with doubt, questioning their faith, and time after time I had dismissed their concerns, telling them that faith required submission, that questioning was a test, not a path to understanding. I thought of Sarah, a bright young woman who had stopped coming to the mosque after voicing her concerns about the role of women in Islam. I had answered her with firm, unyielding words, ones I now recognized as inadequate. Had I failed her? Then there was my own battle, the diagnosis that had shaken my world. At first, learning I had stage 4 pancreatic cancer had only strengthened my faith. I saw it as a test, an opportunity to demonstrate unwavering trust in Allah, and the community had rallied around me, delivering meals to Fatima, organizing prayer circles, and even raising funds for my treatment. Their kindness and love had been overwhelming. But now, as my faith wavered, I felt as if I were betraying them all. One memory in particular haunted me, a conversation with my eldest son, Kareim, just before I nearly died. Why, Allah, he had asked, if he is truly compassionate, why does he allow suffering? I had responded to him in the usual way, as I had always learned. I spoke of divine wisdom, of the temporary nature of worldly pain. But now, standing in the garden, I wondered, Had my son's question been more honest than my answer? And then, the voice from my vision echoed in my mind once more. How do you know he is the creator? That single question sent me down a path I had never dared explore before. I began to research the pre-Islamic period, the Jahiliyyah, the so-called Age of Ignorance. But what if there was more to that story? What if the history I had dismissed held deeper truths? I delved into ancient Semitic religions, their development, their connection to monotheism, and the historical context in which the Quran had emerged. I read in secret, my mind wrestling with the weight of what I was discovering. And yet, the more I learned, the more questions arose. Every discovery felt like a revelation, another crack forming in the foundation of my beliefs. Despite my faith, I found myself unable to stop questioning. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on me, growing heavier with each passing day. Fatima, my wife, noticed the changes in me long before I could admit them to myself. She had always been my source of strength, but now she watched me with increasing concern. I spent hours in my study, surrounded by books that would have been forbidden in our previous life. She would bring me tea, her hand lingering on my shoulder, the silent weight of her worry pressing into me. She was afraid. Though she never spoke the words aloud, her eyes asked the questions she dared not voice. Outside, the whispers in the community grew louder. Why wasn't the Imam leading prayers anymore? Why did he seem so troubled? At first, they blamed it on the toll of cancer treatments. Others conjectured that the Americans might have influenced me. If only they knew the real battle wasn't external. It wasn't about politics, culture, or even my illness. The true war raged within my soul. In my search for clarity, I began having long conversations with Dr. Thompson, my oncologist. She was a scientist who had seen countless patients wrestle with their mortality. There was something about her quiet confidence that drew me in. One day, she shared her own experience of growing up in a strict religious household and later forging her own spiritual path, one that embraced questions rather than fearing them. Her words lingered in my mind long after our conversation ended. The sleepless nights increased. I often found myself pacing the garden, haunted by the faces of those who had trusted me to guide them. The weight of responsibility crushed me at times. In the pre-dawn hours, I would begin my ablutions for Fajr prayer, only to stop halfway, overwhelmed with doubt. One morning, my youngest daughter, Amira, caught me crying. She had always been contemplative, much like me, and instead of speaking right away, she simply sat beside me in silence. After a long pause, she finally asked, "Baba, is it okay to change what you believe if you discover something new?" Her innocent inquiry carried a wisdom beyond her years. Meanwhile, the cancer treatments continued, offering me unexpected moments for reflection. The hospital's small chapel became my refuge, not for prayer, but for silence. I would sit there for hours, watching people of different faiths come and go, each finding solace in their own way. For the first time, I truly noticed the kindness of the Christian nurses who cared for me without any intent of conversion, the serene peace on the face of a Buddhist patient who meditated in the waiting room, and the quiet devotion of a Jewish doctor who, despite his beliefs, worked tirelessly on Saturdays to tend to his patients. Each of them honored their faith in their own way, guided by something deeper than mere ritual. One afternoon, a young Muslim resident recognized me from the mosque. As he entered the chapel, he greeted me with Assalamu alaikum. Shame washed over me. I expected judgment. But instead, he simply sat beside me and, after a moment, began sharing his own struggles with faith. He spoke of his efforts to reconcile modern science with traditional beliefs, of the tension between reason and doctrine. His honesty was refreshing. For the first time, I felt less alone in my questioning, and so I allowed myself to revisit the vision that had changed everything, the bound prophet, the ancient voice, the trembling pages of the Quran. What had once terrified me now took on a new meaning. These were not signs of my downfall, but stepping stones, guiding me toward a greater truth. The walls I had built around my understanding of God were beginning to crumble, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. For the first time in weeks, I felt a small, quiet sense of peace in the stillness of the night. As I stood there, I whispered a prayer, not to the Allah I had always known, but to the Creator, whoever he might be. If you are real, show me the truth. The following day, the chaplain's voice trembled as he spoke. Father John had come to visit me. He wore a simple white robe and carried a Bible in his hands. At first, I hesitated to speak with him, unsure of his intentions. However, his calm demeanor brought me comfort. "Did you see anything?" he asked gently. For the first time, I nodded. Tears streamed down my face as I recounted my experience. The throne, the chains, the overwhelming presence I had encountered. Father John listened intently, without judgment. "And what about Jesus?" he asked. The question surprised me. Although I hadn't seen Jesus, Father John's question made me stop. "Why?" He opened his Bible and read, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." John 14:6. The words pierced my heart. Could Jesus be the answer I had been searching for all along? For weeks, I wrestled with that question. I could feel the change within me, and my family saw it too. My community began to distance themselves, sensing the shift in my spirit. But I could not turn back. One morning, I walked into Father John's church. I stood before him and said, "I want to know the truth." A warm smile spread across his face. "Jesus has been waiting for you," he said. That day, I made my decision. As the water of baptism poured over me, an overwhelming sense of peace washed through my soul. The chains of doubt, the weight of fear, everything that had once bound me was lifted. For the first time, I felt truly free. As I embraced this new journey, I began to notice subtle yet profound changes within myself. My heart, once burdened by the expectations of my role as an Imam, now felt light. I found myself spending hours reading the Bible, discovering stories and teachings that resonated deeply within me. The words of Jesus were filled with compassion and truth. One night, as I read the Sermon on the Mount, tears welled in my eyes. "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." Matthew 5:8. I had spent so much of my life focused on rituals and appearances. But now, for the first time, I was beginning to understand what it truly meant to seek God with my whole heart. Each morning, I wake up with a joy I never knew before. The cancer that once ravaged my body has vanished, leaving even the doctors baffled. But I know who healed me. Every day, I open the Bible and pray, thanking Jesus for saving me. Although my journey has not been easy, I have discovered a peace that transcends all understanding. I am no longer an Imam. I am simply a man transformed by the grace of God. As I share my story, My hope is that others who are searching for the truth will find it. I am the way, the truth, and the life. These words have become my anchor, and they can be yours too. If this testimony has touched your heart, I invite you to join me on this journey of faith. Subscribe to MaxViet God's Word and Prayer, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us seek the truth together. May God bless you abundantly.